Hey guys, and welcome back to the Captain's Corner Pod. I am your co-host, First Mate Ray Russell, back to bring you all things Captain Corner with Mr. Nick Massey himself. And in order to do that, time to ask that ever-important question, what's happening, Captain?
Ray, has it been 2 weeks already since I answered that question? Can't believe it has, and we're back for another episode of the Captain's Corner podcast. And I can honestly say I've been having a great time the last couple of months recording this with of course, yourself, producer extraordinaire, the hardest working man in the podcast game, Rugged Ray Russell, but then all the guests we've had on too.
Yeah, we've had quite a few already. A lot of them headed to the Portland Wrestling Expo.
A lot of them head to the Portland Wrestling Expo, which we're going to talk about, quite a bit and in detail. And our featured guest today, actually, he'll be at the Portland Wrestling Expo as well, Kerby Strom. And Kerby is going to talk a little bit about his connection to the Portland wrestling scene, some of the amazing pieces of memorabilia he has, and maybe what he'll be bringing to the Portland Wrestling Expo. So hope everyone stays tuned for that.
Ooh, that sounds like fun. I'm looking forward to that when he joins the show here momentarily. Lots of great feedback I'm seeing online. People very excited out there in the Pacific Northwest for the Portland Wrestling Expo. People that I don't necessarily conversate with are even contacting and just saying, hey man, this sounds like a great deal. I'm looking forward to going. So hopefully, there's tuning in. I always plug the podcast. You never know who we're going to have on here. Some great favorites from the old days. Mike Miller most recently, but Top Gun, Cuban Assassin, of course, Ricky Santana, the list goes on. And I'm just, looking forward to seeing who you bring in here each and every time. And going to be a fun one here today again. But Nick, little birdie told me that you recently you had some contact with a very popular professional wrestler, sports entertainer, some might argue, from back in the day, back in my day, back in your day, the heyday of the 1980s into the early 90s. Many would call that era the Hulkamania era, Nick. I do believe you ran into one, Mr. Hulk Hogan himself. Tell us about your time with the Hulkster.
What you gonna do when Captain's Corner runs wild on you? Yeah, Ray. We spent some time with the immortal Hulk Hogan, like you said. My absolute favorite growing up as a little Hulkamaniac, and then through being a much bigger Hulkamaniac. I can honestly say that if there was a bucket list of wrestlers that I've wanted to work with, I've been blessed to check off a lot of them over the last few years. Kevin Vaughn Erich, Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat, Sergeant Slaughter, the list goes on and on. But working with Hulk Hogan was the biggest check in the entire bucket list. So it happened this past Monday. A lot of traveling involved. Hulk doesn't really leave the Florida area for signings. He did make an appearance in New York City on Sunday night that we're not going to go into at the moment. But he was back in Tampa, the Clearwater area on Monday. And, I flew in with a couple of partners. Shout out to my buddy Steve and Nick from Heroes Hideout. And, combined along with one of our helpers, Little Joe, we had over 400 items signed by Hulk Hogan that afternoon. And Hulk actually wanted to start the signing a little earlier than we even went on. And because we were based in Orlando, we were about 2 hours from the hotel we were doing the signing out of. We had to tell Hulk, hey, Hulk, we'd love to, but it is going to take us some time to get over. We have to get the items set up. But we started a little after 1:15. Like I said, Hogan banged out between 450 and, maybe 480 items in about under 90 minutes, which is
he's a pro at that by this point, Nick.
And let me tell you something, Ray. I've worked with hundreds of talents over the years. He never had to be told what character he was signing. He never had to be told the best spot to sign it in. He knew what was Hollywood Hogan. He knew what was Thunderlips. He knew what was Hulk Hogan. He knew what was Mr. America. So he signed everything the way it needed to be signed. Every signature looks great. And he did a good job of just keeping conversation going, too. He took his breaks because, 400-plus items is a lot for anybody. So he would take his breaks. He'd talk a little bit to us about, his feelings on some of the topical issues that are going on right now. And then we got everything done. And then took about another hour or so to clean up. And I got hightailing over to where I was staying for the night, right outside Clearwater. And I had a virtual signing with the Cuban Assassin. So shout out to our boy, Dave Sierra, a.k.a. Top Gun. And Top Gun will be at the Portland Wrestling Expo. We'll be telling everyone about a little more details about that coming up in a bit. But, it was a busy 36 hours. Got back home late last night. And today was just making sure everything was going smooth on the family end and, getting back to what is normalcy in the Captain's Cove. So
whatever that might be.
What and normalcy changes all the time. But
I know how that goes, Nick.
Yeah, but I could honestly say that it was unbelievable working with Hulk Hogan, and there's a good chance that we may be doing something with him again in the next 6-7 months or so. So it will not be the last time we do something with Hulk Hogan. So make sure to check the captain's feed for details on whenever that next Hulk Hogan signing might be coming up.
Very cool, brother. I love it. So you talked about Hogan needing breaks. Hey, even Santa Claus at the mall needs breaks, Nick. So that's okay.
Santa Claus doesn't work as hard as Hulk Hogan.
Well, I don't know if I go that far now, but hey, that's I got to believe. I've told this story so many times. I can't kayfabe and bullshit everyone here on the Captain's Corner. I was not a Hulkamaniac growing up, Nick.
I can tell, Ray. Jeez.
I was a Warrior guy and a Macho Man guy.
I love Macho.
People pretend like they didn't like the Warrior. No, I respect what Hogan did, for the business and just what he accomplished for himself. And I do love Thunder Lips. I'm going to tell you that right now. And Hulk Hogan in Japan. I like that too. I'll go that. Yeah. Ichiban, number one. But so I wasn't a giant Hogan fan, but I can only imagine what that would mean for the Hulkamaniacs that grew up watching, just loving him, and to be able to work side by side with him and him being such a cool dude, because you hear a lot of dick stories about some of these top level guys sometimes. Sure. And I'm glad that, this went off without a hitch. And it sounds like it was a great time and a great time had by all. And I'm happy that everybody got all those things signed in such a short window of time too. I mean, again, a pro, he's a pro at that at this point.
Well, and I could tell you that it was one of those things. I'm pretty calm for the most part, and I was excited for the signing, but it was business first, and there's a lot of stress involved when you're taking dozens and dozens of items and you're flying to get to a place where the signing's happening, and then you have to get X amount of items done in the right way within the time window. So it was, looking back and reflecting on it, it was amazing to get checked off the bucket list. But at the same time, while it was going on, there were some stressful moments, but we made it through. We persevered, and we're on to another legend, Ric Flair, the Nature Boy. We'll be doing a private signing with him in the next week and a half. So if anyone wants to get involved in the next legendary private signing, we're doing it at Captain's Corner. Check us out on Facebook, but we will be having some great items from Ric Flair. We've worked with a lot of his contemporaries.
Sounds like you're working your way through the Mount Rushmore of living legends currently right now.
Yeah. And we've done some private signings with Flair before, but since we had the pre-pandemic, but since we've had the last private signing, we've worked with Lex Luger, Barry Windham, Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson, J.J. Dillon. So needless to say, we've got a ton of other Ric Flair items from our own collection that will be available, to be picked up by anyone listening, anyone watching, that where they can add Nature's 16-time signature on there.
I might have to look into that, Nick. I need to maybe add somebody to the back wall here.
Hey, you let me know, right? Now I got a question for you. You brought up Warrior and Macho. Yeah. Now, do you have a specific favorite of those two, or are those two 1A and 1B?
I'm talking as a kid now. I'm not talking today. I look back and, we know the stories of the Warrior behind the scenes, kind of changes your perception. Also, watching him wrestle as an adult kind of changes your perception as well. But I'll never forget, as a child, there was no one greater to me during that period than the Ultimate Warrior. And I would flip the channel and Sting was my favorite on the other channel.
No, Warrior was. So I was joking before. I have a special place in my heart for Warrior. So my first, and I'll tell you the two connections. So my cousin was at the first SummerSlam 88, MSG. And at the time, of course, they were building to the big Brutus Beefcake and Honky Tonk Man blow off. And for whatever reason, storyline wise, of course, Brutus got injured by those spurs of the dastardly outlaw Ron Bass. But, Honky Tonk didn't have an opponent. And he called out anyone from the back, and Warrior runs down. The place goes crazy, and we have a new Intercontinental champion. So my cousin was there. God, I would have been 3 or 4 at the time. He was probably a teenager. He wound up bringing me home 2 things, Ray. He brought me home a Mine doll from George the Animal Steel, and he brought me home Ultimate Warrior T-shirt. So I probably had that T-shirt. It hasn't fit me in about 30 plus years, but I had it probably in my 20s at some point. Stupid me. I threw it away. That T-shirt, it was still in pretty good shape, so it would have been worth something. Still have the Mine doll, by the way, which is also
That's awesome.
But my second memory with Warrior is that he actually headlined the first MSG show I ever went to, with one of your other favorites, Macho Man Randy Savage. It's February 1989. It was right after, the big turn on the main event with Hogan and Savage. And, it was Savage's one of his first title defenses as a bad guy. He defended against the Ultimate Warrior. And at the time, I was absolutely infatuated with Miss Elizabeth. And they announced, Howard Finkel announced when the match started, due to the events at the main event, Miss Elizabeth will not be in the corner of Macho Man Randy Savage, which broke my heart. But then they made the announcement that the main event would be a title match, which everyone went crazy for, of course. A little trivia. First wrestling match I saw live, Jim Powers and Iron Mike Sharp. That was the opening match of that night. What about you, Ray, since we got on this now?
I was going to say, a lot of people's first match was probably Jim Powers and Iron Mike Sharp. They opened the cards for years there. No, my first match was actually Tito Santana versus Bob Bradley at the Richfield Coliseum.
Ooh, what year was that? We're talking
90-ish, something like that.
Okay. Super Cat. Was he Super Cat or Super Bad?
Battle Cat. Yeah,
he was Battle Cat, but he was super something in world class.
In world class.
I got you. Super Bad Bob Bradley, I think. And then he's Battle Cat. Yeah, he took over for Brady Boone, right?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, the memories we have as kids.
Yeah, absolutely. They stick with me, forever. And, for years there, before tape trading and the internet and all that stuff, Nick, all I had was memories of the 4 or 5 weeks Battle Cat existed. And it got to the point in the mid-90s where I started questioning my own childhood. Did I make that up? Because it came and went so fast, but I remembered it fondly because as a kid, I liked that character and the colors were cool on him. Right. So, and finally, JohnMcAdam.com came out and I saw Battle Cat on the listing and I bought the tape and I said, boom, there, I knew there was a Battle Cat. Now people are like, well, yeah, it's all over fucking YouTube, right? But back then, that's not how shit worked. So
I didn't remember a match of Battle Cat. I remembered him appearing in one of the magazines, either a program or a WWF magazine. I remember thinking, whoa, who's that? And, I kept my initial magazine collection throughout the 2000s, and then we downsized a bit when we had our oldest child, Dylan. But I didn't see a Battle Cat match until probably, the early 2000s, whenever YouTube would have picked up. And then I was like, oh, wow. He was essentially, a Tiger Mask ripoff to some extent, but at the same time, very cool looking. And Brady Boone and Bob Bradley, in my opinion, both two very underrated names from the 80s.
Yeah, absolutely. Brady Boone certainly more agile, but Bob Bradley, when he took over the cat costume, kind of gave himself away immediately because the one thing he always did was the handspring, the backflip elbow into the corner. All of a sudden, Battle Cat was doing the backflip elbow into the corner. I go, wait a minute here. Because Bob Bradley was one of my favorite enhancement guys in the WWF. So to see him, and how the enhancement stuff worked on the house shows, the matches would be 2 or 3 minutes on TV. They'd go 10 minutes at the house show. So Bob Bradley had plenty of offense there working Tito Santana. So it was fun to see a competitive match with Bradley in there because, again, he was one of my favorite preliminary guys. So I remember that match fondly, though, just watching them and going, wow, I'm here. I made it.
One thing about Bob Bradley, too, is that he was on and off with the WWF a lot longer than people remember. There's like matches from the Cap Center in 82 and 83 where he's like in the opening match or two. And it's like, whoa, Bradley was still there through 92, 93. So and now, of course, he was in other territories, most notably world class in between that. I know he worked for Watts for a little bit, but Bob Bradley, he's someone, by the way, he's a Captain's Corner guy. If someone could get me details on Bob Bradley, I'd love to do something with him, whether it's a virtual signing, public signing, because there's a lot of people that would love to get him in the Battle Cat section. It's like,
there would be a promo pic on my wall faster than you could snap.
There would be.
I promise you, there would be. I'm telling you. Oh my God, that's pretty damn cool. I know you got a guest coming on here momentarily. I don't know if you want to get into the announcement we teased last time around. You posted it online, the social media since that time.
Let's do it,
I bit my tongue. I never told a soul, and I waited for you to announce it online first. I still haven't told anyone because it's out there for those who haven't seen it, though. I wanted you to share that here, the big announcement for the latest guest to join the Portland Wrestling Expo.
You did get the breaking news off camera, and you did a good job of keeping our little secret. So thank you, Ray. But the big announcement that we made last week is joining the grappler Ricky Santana, Top Gun, me and Mike Miller, Moondog Moretti, Rikishi, the list goes on and on, is someone that spent a good amount of time in his early part of his career in Portland, where he held both the tag team titles and the heavyweight championship. He also made his name in the Dallas area. So while I'm advertising him as one name for the Portland Wrestling Expo, a lot of people know him as another name. So I'm going to just shoot straight with you. Ricky Vaughn, a.k.a. Lance Von Erich, will be with us at the Portland Wrestling Expo. This will be his first convention, his first signing appearance ever on the West Coast. And we'll be doing a virtual sign that weekend, too, in case anyone can't make it to Portland. But we highly hope everyone heads over to pwexpo.com, gets their ticket now for the Portland Wrestling Expo. I can tell you, Ray, I brought up in a post last night that the opening month of the Portland Wrestling Expo is actually the highest opening month of convention tickets we've ever had. And wow. We've run shows in Florida. We've run shows in New Jersey and Connecticut and Massachusetts. So 6 or 7 conventions at this point. And the Portland Wrestling Expo has done the most opening month sales. So everyone in the Pacific Northwest is really excited to see everyone. And when I was planning the show, I didn't think Ricky Vaughn was a possibility, I'll be honest with you. Mm-hmm. But, some things fell our way, and Ricky Vaughn will be there February 22nd, Holiday Inn, Portland Airport, Portland Wrestling Expo.
That's pretty damn cool. I got to admit, when you told me that off camera last time around, I was like, wow, that's a good get. That's a great get. And, that's a rarity too. He's been known as Lance Von Erich down in Dallas. He worked for Wild West as the Fabulous Lance. Of course, couldn't keep the name.
Sure did.
Ricky Vaughn, of course, we know, working in the Pacific Northwest. He did have a run there as well, as you said. And so I liken this to, you talked about, how many tickets you guys have already sold for the event coming up in February, and how well you guys did with the early sales. And I liken it to a pay-per-view, maybe even a WrestleMania, let's say, where you buy the tickets in advance because you're just excited for the event. And then you get hit with an awesome main event match that you weren't even expecting. And you go, oh, wow, well, that sold my ticket right there. I already bought the ticket anyway, but this is great. And I feel like anybody who bought the tickets prior to that announcement, they have to be like, holy, I can't believe it. That's great news.
Yeah. I appreciate that, Ray. And we had a very good lineup before that. But yeah, once the Lance Von Erich name was announced, I could tell you we had our second biggest day after the opening day ticket sales. So it was very exciting. And you know what? We're not even close to being done. We'll probably have another half dozen names announced before it's all said and done. So once again, I urge anyone that's listening right now, or, maybe if you've got the VIP access to the video, head on over to pwexpo.com and check out all of the amazing guests we've already announced. And what we're doing is we're making sure that we have tickets in every single budget. They start as low as $25 and they go all the way up to the VIP, which is, $149. But I'd like to think that the value you're getting in that $149 ticket is, well beyond that price tag, where you're getting autographs from 6-7 different featured guests. You're getting the Portland 100 Q&A. You're getting the Pro Wrestling Road Stories with the Grappler. You're getting early access to the convention. You're getting a limited lanyard. You're getting a Portland Wrestling print. So you're getting a lot of stuff. And, of course, you'll be there. You'll be at the Portland Wrestling Expo on February 22nd. So a lot of good stuff. In the VIP are already over 30% sold. So my guess is they'll be completely sold out before we get to the month of February. So if someone wants to get a VIP ticket, head on over to pwexpo.com as soon as you can.
Awesome. Great stuff. Well, while we're waiting for our guest to show up, Nick, I know you do a lot of things online as well. Do you have any virtuals coming up?
Well, a virtual signing, we have it there. I'll break some news with you right now. So we have 3 virtual signings that we're going to be announcing for November 14th, 15th, and 16th, which is the Wrestling Classic 5 weekend, which I know we're going to talk about in a bit. But we're going to have 3 straight days of wrestling virtuals. And kicking us off on Thursday, February 14th, is Downtown Bruno, a.k.a. Harvey Whippleman, former guest of, the Captain's Corner podcast. He'll be kicking us off. Then on Friday, November 15th, we have, AEW veteran, Shine veteran, Impact Wrestling veteran, the Bunny, Allie, a.k.a. Cherry Bomb. She's going to be with us. She's a very requested guest that was had a very nice run on AEW TV. She was on Dynamite Rampage, a bunch of the pay-per-views, usually managing Butcher and the Blade, but she also managed QT Marshall, part Team Cody. So that's going to be an exciting signing. And then returning to us on Saturday, November 16th, which is the same day as the Wrestling Classic 5, is someone who will now be having his 4th virtual signing here at Captain's Corner, and that's the one and only, the Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant.
Woo, massive baby.
Oh, there it is, Ray. Jimmy Valiant will be returning to Captain's Corner on Saturday, November 16th. So once again,
Phenomenal.
Thursday the 14th, downtown Bruno, a.k.a. Harvey Whippleman. Friday the 15th, Cherry Bomb, a.k.a. Allie, a.k.a. The Bunny. And then Saturday the 16th, the one and only Boogie Woogie Man, Handsome Jimmy, the boy from New York City, is going to be with us once again for a fourth time. And Jimmy's right up there with Bob Orton, Barry Windham, Shane Douglas, with guests we've had on. We've worked with Marty Jannetty, guests we've worked with the most over the last 10, 11 years. So always good to have Boogie back on.
Wow, lots going on, man.
And yes. Always good to the Captain's Corner audience.
It holds a spot and near and dear to my heart as a child. I promise you that. Well, it looks like our guest has arrived here. Nick, if you would like to introduce.
Oh, absolutely. And we were talking about the Portland Wrestling Expo, and we're going to have so many legendary names there on Saturday, February 22nd, the Holiday Inn Portland Airport. But one of the cool features about the Portland Wrestling Expo is that we're going to have a lot of amazing vendors. They're going to be showcasing all kinds of memorabilia celebrating the Pacific Northwest. And right now, we'd like to introduce one of those vendors. He's, I would say, one of the top historians in Portland wrestling. He's got an amazing collection of pieces throughout the history of Portland wrestling. Kerby Strom. I hope I said your last name right, Kerby.
Yes, you got it.
Thank you for joining the Captain's Corner podcast tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me on here. I'm really looking forward to the expo. That's gonna be a good time.
I'm looking forward to it too, Kerby. Now, we're going to talk about the expo, and we're going to talk about all the amazing pieces that you'll either be able to bring to the expo, or maybe a piece or two that's a favorite from your collection. But I got to start with, how did you get into Portland wrestling? When did your love of Portland wrestling begin?
So I definitely saw the Buddy Rose tapes. I guess everybody kind of knows the story of that now. Rich Patterson had those digitized. And I just really fell in love with that footage, particularly the 70s stuff. Like some of the earliest matches they have on there is like Lonnie Main and Buddy Rose, things like that. Seeing Piper starting in the territory in late 78 and to 79 and 80, like just so many, obviously familiar names to those who grew up in like the WWF, WCW era, and to kind of get an education on territorial wrestling by watching all this Portland footage, and just really, I mean, that's kind of where it all began with everything for me. So
now, before the Portland wrestling, you went back and watched some of the videotapes. What was the wrestling, I guess, that you grew up with, or that you got to see first? Yeah,
so I'm definitely a Monday Night Wars kid. I always kind of tend to lean towards the WCW side.
Sure.
I had a brother who was 3 years older than me, and I remember this one time he's like, "Oh, I like the WCW stuff, the WWF stuff, so it's so cartoony." And so I was like, and as a younger brother, I'm like, yeah, you're right, of course, yeah. So I guess I kind of liked that perceived realism in that era, where obviously, I was never like a smart fan. I wasn't doing newsletters and stuff at that time or anything. But just like you always kind of knew something was up with wrestling, but there was always this kind of element of like, were we supposed to see that? Just what anything the NW did, especially in those early years for all that stuff, it kind of was just like, wait, was that kind of went off script? What's going on here? Right? I kind of liked that element of it. So I guess that the realism that the WCW stuff had at the time, I suppose.
I got a question for you. You talked about those, the footage, the 1977 to 1980 footage there that dropped several years ago now.
Yeah.
I remember, seeing some, all of that really when it first came out. And I was just, wow, I was so excited because I'd already been studying the business as itself and watching some of the 80s footage, the 1980s stuff with Piper, the Sheep Herders, and things of that nature. And so to see even earlier stuff was just an absolute treat, obviously. So I got to ask you, since that time when you were watching the early stuff and that hooked you on the Portland wrestling territory, did you have an opportunity to watch more of it throughout the 1980s? And if so, what was something that stuck out to you that you were like, wow, it just continues to get better and better?
Yeah, I definitely, essentially I've kind of, I would say I've seen probably about 90% of what is available from the tape traders and stuff like that. So, I definitely, like, I really, rode hard for Buddy Rose, I would say. So I just learned, so much about being a heel, I guess, like, understanding the psychology of what that's like for a wrestler by watching him. But, and then I guess when you kind of go later on in that late 80s, early 90s era, I kind of, I tend to refer to that as like the twilight era of the promotion, because it was like they were still had something going on there, I really, really enjoyed when Scotty the Body was doing the heel commentating there. I thought that was fantastic. Certainly, I think a highlight in some of those later years. And it's cool to see like the, Scott Peterson and Steve Dahl as like the Southern Rockers, and then and later Rex King, and it's just kind of like, I think because Grappler's like booking around that time, there's kind of like an element of it's like emulating a little bit of this Mid-South style thing where everybody's booked in an angle. And then as well as there's kind of like the WWF thing where it's like a little bit more kid oriented. And I would say probably a lot of people would agree that was because like Bruce Anderson was the commissioner at the time. And so he was putting the clamp down on things like blood and stuff. And so I think they were kind of forced to have a little bit more kid friendly product, But I mean, those are definitely some highlights. I love Scotty the Body on commentary. Like, it's great, man. It's some of the best stuff on there. So good.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I got to see him in Global as Scott Anthony, then he becomes Scotty Flamingo in WCW, and then he becomes Johnny Polo. And I would say Johnny Polo was the closest thing you got to what he was doing in Portland, as far as the character went, as far as the promos went, the commentary went.
Yeah.
He was back to just having fun, slapstick, silly stuff. I say it all the time. People are probably sick of hearing me say it, but I loved listening to him host Radio WWF for the last 8 months of that run, because he just simply went on there every Saturday night for 2 hours. Nobody was listening. Vince didn't care. And he just did whatever he felt like doing. So it was like 2 hours of Scotty the Body shtick.
Yeah. It's funny how he kind of too got pigeonholed as being like this commentator person or whatever, or like doing the managing or whatever. And then to have it like a second life, I guess, in like the Raven character, the ECW and WCW stuff, like then it was like, oh, okay. But it seemed like that kind of followed him where he was doing that. Although I feel like I've heard from people say that, Scott Levy, the person who is closest, like what gimmick is closest to the real Scott Levy? And I've always heard Scotty the Body is like, that's the Scott Levy,
Would you say that's accurate, Nick? I would say that's accurate.
Yeah. Someone who's worked with him a few times, I could tell you he's definitely a smart ass at heart, and and that's what we love about him, right?
Yeah, he's a pun man. I know he likes his puns and that sort of thing, right? Or
definitely loves his puns, likes a good joke, likes to bust chops. Now, Kerby, you kind of told us a little about your origins as a fan, catching up on, that the old Portland territory, that stuff that existed before you were able to really watch it as it was happening. But how did you make that dive into kind of becoming the curator of one of the biggest Portland wrestling collections in the world?
I think one of the first things I got was from a guy, James Tolan up in Seattle. He had a bunch of old 8x10s that he had shared on a Facebook page, and he had some of Mike Rogers' Ring Around the Northwest newsletters and stuff. And that's how I first learned about his newsletter. And I was just like, hey, man, like, he was kind of sharing it, but also kind of like in a way, like almost saying as if he was like kind of reminiscing, going through this stuff, but like kind of letting go of it. And so I messaged him like, hey, man, if you think you can part with that, let me know. Obviously, I know this is very sentimental for a lot of people that went there, but if you ever feel like you're at a place where you can let go of the stuff, And so I got all these 8x, original. I like to collect the original ones. I know people do like the digital reprints, but I'm very like stickler about having the old optical print from a negative. I don't know, just obsessive collecting mentality. But and it was tons of Buddy Rose stuff in there. They're like one of the gimmick 8x10s they had was like when Buddy lost the hair match to Piper in 80. Like they did the whole thing of like, there's a photo of Buddy with the shaved head, and he's like, oh, don't buy the photo. I'm going to leave the territory if you buy the photo. And of course, obviously like really just trying to amp up the sales. But that was among one of the things. And one of the really cool things I got in there that I've never, ever come across was an old full color 8x10 of Austin Idol when he's in Portland. And God, wow. He was, I can't remember the full length. I think he was here for maybe like 3 months or something. I know he never really spoke highly of the territory, but that was just like crazy. Just like, and that was honestly, like I said, I learned about territorial wrestling through Portland. So that was like my first time coming across this guy, Austin Idol. And then that, you kind of, as you learn about these people, right, you kind of just spiral and you kind of just keep digging further and further. So then it's like, okay, what's this Austin Idol guy all about? But so I kind of started collecting the 8x10s. I've said this before, but one of my favorite things to collect is like old scrapbooks, like that the fans would make, as they go to the matches, especially these photos that were, taken on their own 35 millimeter cameras or whatever. And then they felt compelled to assemble them and put them together in scrapbooks. So I love that. Just, for so many reasons, I love seeing what people felt compelled to document, like that was something that they did on a weekly basis going to the matches at the Portland Sports Arena, that they were compelled to make this book and document in their time. And it, a lot of times there's like the ticket stubs or like the little newspaper clipping out of the newspaper and things like that. And then, of course, the photos that are not mass circulated, right? Because I think we've all run down a Google image search and seen a lot of what's out there. So that's one of my favorite things. I love seeing these photos that so many people haven't seen. So in curating that history, getting the programs, getting Super 8 millimeter footage that's never been seen from the territory. And, I got my Dutch Savage, his varsity jacket, right? Just like, the ring worn stuff, whatever, you name it. I love collecting that old ephemera like that. It's a bygone era. It's hard because we've lost a lot of this stuff to time, so it's cool when I'm able to kind of curate it all together here.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite things about collecting.
I envy everyone that does that. I mean, a little bit of jealousy, obviously, seeing collectors like yourself. Man, I wish I had all of that, but I'm so happy somebody does, right? Because like you said, lost in time. Think about how much gets lost, every year as, people pass away and their kids have, they don't watch wrestling and what is this? And they just kind of toss it out in the trash or something like that. And they don't know what they have, and you do. And so it's so cool that you're able to do that. And one thing I wanted you to do here on the show, Kerby, before we get too deep into this and forget to do it, why don't you tell everybody how they can find you on social media? I believe you have a Facebook page specifically that I see in my feed.
Okay, so I'm mostly on Instagram because kind of the format I work with is visual, obviously. Like I said, a lot of photos. So my handle on Instagram is Classic Portland Wrestling. I share on the Rich Patterson Facebook page, Fans of Portland Wrestling, just as myself. And then I'm on Twitter or X or whatever as PDX Sports Arena. So those are kind of like the main channels that I kind of share my, collection on and whatever. And, I kind of ebb and flow sometimes with how involved I am and whatever. But sure enough, I'm always I try to post on there at least a couple times a week, 2-3 times a week and share something new from.
Oh yeah. It's great. It's great. It's great to look at. We really appreciate going out of your way to doing that for us.
Oh, of course.
And I speak for the fans when I say us.
Yeah. No, totally. I got you.
Now, Kerby, you brought up, and by the way, check out Kerby, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, such cool stuff. As I'm a fan of the territories as well. And when I first learned about Portland wrestling, I feel like it was almost the wrestling's little secret, because it didn't always get the national coverage that a lot of the other territories did. So learning about that stuff, the little nooks and crannies that, if I can still learn about something today, that's always getting a little extra enjoyment out of it. Now, I know you recently released some VHS tapes. That's right, Ray. VHS tapes.
I've seen it.
Kerby had some footage from Tacoma that was never seen. Some, I believe, 8 millimeter footage. Can you talk about the process of unearthing that and then bringing that to the public?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess a mutual friend of ours, that was through a correspondence through my friend Ken Hamblin, who lives in Tacoma, Washington. And early on, I bought photos from him and his time going to the matches. I can't say for sure his earliest he was going there. I want to say around like 77, maybe possibly 76. But this footage that Ken shot on Super 8 millimeter, I believe the earliest is 78, and it goes to about 80, 81, but largely in that kind of 78, 79, 80 sweet spot. And that's an era I think a lot of people are very fond of because that's, where Piper's very, very prominent in a lot of that, kind of being, I would say, one of the, most emblematic people of the territory when people think of Portland, of course, other than like, say, Buddy Rose or something. So yeah, I got these that was over the pandemic. I got these tapes from Ken, and there's a fellow that lives like maybe half a mile from me that works with film and digitizing it. And so I brought these tapes to him at the time, not knowing what was on it. I mean, I knew it was wrestling, of course, but not really knowing what was contained. So sure enough, we have an hour and a half of footage, kind of that classic Portland wrestling love shot in Tacoma, Washington by Ken Hamblin. it isn't, it should be noted that because of the limitations of Super 8, the reels are really short. So I guess you would say that Ken would stop recording during maybe like I guess what people call rest holds, whether, whatever you believe that or not, but you get to see a lot of these high spots, things like that. But there's some really great footage in there. I was just watching it a little bit earlier with a friend today. There's like match with Rick Martel versus Buddy Rose, and the sheep herders are suspended over the ring in one of those Shark Tank style gimmick things in the Bicentennial Pavilion. There's several Andre matches in there. One that we were just watching, it's Andre tagging with Snuka against Ron Bass, but Sam Bass here in Portland.
Oliver Bass.
Yeah, that's right. XOB. God, I think was Austin Idol in that one. There's a good Piper and Rose cage match in there. There's some Killer Brooks dog collar matches with Lord Jonathan Boyd that are just bloody as hell, awesome, and also too with the Super 8mm footage. This particular footage has no audio, which is typical of the format. So I had a friend write a synthesized soundtrack for it, and I interspersed over it interviews from what a fan called what is it called? Welcome to the Crow's Nest, which was like a fan had recorded the promos off the TV onto like a reel-to-reel or something, And so I interspersed that with the music, and it's actually contemporaneous to the footage you're seeing, which is kind of cool. It's like roughly the same era. So, there's like music and then these promos, and it's pretty good. It's fun. And then I did the VHS format as kind of like just like a throwback to the tape trading days of wrestling, right? And that's how so many people saw territory wrestling. So I just thought that would be a fun kind of gimmick. I think eventually down the road we'll probably explore doing a DVD. I'm already about a little over halfway through the stock of it, and wow. It's pretty cool. Hopefully we'll still have some by the time the expo, or I'll try to do a reorder before then if I run out. But it's really cool. Yeah, people really taken to it, so I'm excited about that.
Well, Kerby, I'm going to get with you after the fact here and see how I can get a hold of some of those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, man. I got another question here, if you don't mind, Nick. I'm going to step on your toes, ask him another question.
Go for it, Rugged Ray.
Absolutely. So you said you watched about 90% of what's out there by this point. So I'm going to ask you a question. I'm curious from another fan's point of view here. In the 1980s, lots of talent came and went through the Portland territory. We know all the big names, but I'm curious if there were a name or two that you saw in Portland that you wondered, why did they never make it? Why were they never in the WWF or Jim Crockett or in any other territory perhaps? And I know there's like the locals, say like a Crippler Rip Oliver, who was there forever, but sure. Was there anyone else who came in and out for a period of time where you I hate to put you on the spot when I'm asking you this, but I'm just curious, like, did you see somebody there where you're like, why, what happened?
Sure. I think there's certainly people I would say that were like maybe a little too ahead of the time, I guess, for let's say the national expansion. Like, I think it's almost kind of like inverse of your question. Like, I think Dutch Savage is such a fantastic regional territory wrestler. And I think when you go deep into watching him and you see some of the promos he does, like I hate to say like he's a tweener, but he kind of has this like sternness when he does his promos, and it's like almost tweener, I guess, but he still manages to be a babyface because he's so familiar to the people. But, I guess if you look into the 80s, he would have been obviously too old to have been somebody that, you can, be pushed in a spot like that. I think one of the what ifs, you wonder about is like a Lonnie Main, because he passed prematurely. Like, could he have been in a Freddie Blassie type role in the WWF or like a Lou Albano role? Like, obviously there was the Moondogs and stuff like that. But I feel like he could have had some sort of on-air character as a manager or something,
Mm-hmm.
that could have done something. Gosh, that's a good question.
I knew I put you on the spot when I asked you
it's
that.
good.
There's so many guys that came through there. Most of them did go on to become huge stars. We were talking about that last episode, Nick, how many different names came through there. We were talking with Mike Miller, or when we were talking with Ricky Santana. Sure. Just think about the Dynamite Kids, the Kurt Hennigs, and Chris Adams went through there. Tom Prig. Yeah. Everybody had a cup of coffee, at least in the Portland territory, right? And
I think what it allowed is, and this was a thing that the territories allowed, was that guys who maybe didn't have, say, like the size had the opportunity to be a top guy. So like, I almost think like a Hack Sawyer or something, right? Like, I don't know that he would have been the guy on WWF, but he worked really well in the territories. because I think he was maybe like 5'9" or something, but he, pretty big build, and he was just perfect for a territory, especially a territory like Portland, and he was over like Rover, people loved him here. So it's almost like, I think that's more about what I think about the Portland territory and the territories in general, is the guys who were able to get over because of how that system worked, That, I guess that's kind of what I think. Or like, Tommy Rogers or something like that, or a Tom Pritchard. Like, those guys were able to get over as like top baby faces, I think, because of the way that system really worked, And of course, and then us dorks know who those names are, right? We're like, oh, Tom Pritchard, legendary, trainer, whatever, But
yeah, you're right though. Tommy Rogers, Tom Pritchard, Hack Sawyer, all similar size, build, but and they all did well in other territories. But in Portland, they all held more titles and might have been given the ball a little more. Than other places.
I thought of one. Rip Rogers. And he always talks down on himself about his time in Portland, specifically because he's like, oh, I was so green at that time and whatever. But when you watch his promos and stuff, I thought he nailed it, man. Like, I can't speak to the in-ring because I never wrestled, but I like what I saw from him, and and I thought he was a great heel in Portland. He if anything, he reminded me of like my brother in the like that kind of bravado, like that he like my brother would kind of be cocky like that or something. It's just like when you recognize that in a wrestler or something, you're like, oh, kind of prickish behavior or something. I thought he was great in Portland. Like, maybe that's a guy I'd be like, I wish that guy was had a spot bigger somewhere,
And Rip Rogers, someone else been able to work with. And I would have loved to see him come back to Portland too down the line after that first run there. Would have been great to see him 83, 84, 85.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, Kerby, I want to thank you for your time the last 15, 20 minutes or so. You'll be at the Portland Wrestling Expo, so I'm going to leave you with a couple of questions. Now, the Portland Wrestling Expo, as a reminder, Saturday, February 22nd, is going to take place at the Holiday Inn Portland Airport. We've got the Grappler, we've got Top Gun, Ricky Santana, Mean Mike Miller, Ricky Vaughn, Moondog Moretti, and the list is not over. We got a bunch of names to add. But I'm going to put you on the spot, Kerby, and I'm going to ask you one. Tell everyone what you're going to, if you could, maybe tease them with a couple of pieces that you'll be bringing to the Portland Wrestling Expo, and then maybe name who you might be most excited to meet or for the first time, or maybe see again at the Portland Wrestling Expo.
Sure. So I'm definitely, I'd say a lot of my collection, again, is the 70s stuff, and I think what people look forward to seeing if they haven't seen it before. I've done a few pop-ups in town, but I have some of Piper's trunks from Portland. I would say probably the most emblematic ones too, the tartan green ones and the yellow. I have a lot of Buddy Rose's stuff from his estate, and I have some of his trunks that I have nice framed and everything. Probably be bringing the Dutch Savage jacket here. Yeah, a lot of old 8x10s. I'll probably try to lean into some of that later 80s stuff since we're going to have some of those guys on the panel there. Probably bring some of that. I have some ephemera from that, like some of the old shirts that they would sell at the merchandise booth and stuff. So maybe we could wrap about that off air, and you can kind of help me decide. But in terms of somebody I'm really looking forward to seeing and talking to is probably me and Mike Miller. I did acquire the late 70s tag belt from him that was made by Reggie Parks. I think it was introduced in the territory around 78. So we've had a lot of correspondence on the phone and stuff like that, but it'll be cool to meet him in person and just be like, I've sent him a Christmas card and stuff like this. So, but it'll be nice to meet him in person and be able to, rap and talk about stuff. So hopefully he doesn't try to wrestle me for it back or something.
Well, Kerby, I'm looking forward to meeting you in person the weekend of the Portland Wrestling Expo. Can't wait to see what you're bringing out. And as it gets closer, we could talk about some ideas, because I'd love to, kind of hear what you've got on the table for everyone that'll be coming to the PWE on February 2nd. Yeah,
it's going to be cool, man. I'm really looking forward to it.
And Ray's going to get all of the high spots, all of your Instagram, Twitter, Facebook plugs. We're going to make sure to plug the VHS tapes. So,
awesome.
Everyone needs to get, anyone that's a fan of some stuff that hasn't been seen specifically from the Portland territory, the Pacific Northwest territory, jump on those VHS while you can, because once they're gone, they may be gone.
Yep. Awesome.
Thank you so much again for stopping by, Kerby. And we'll be talking soon. And once again, I can't wait to meet you at the Portland Wrestling Expo, February 22nd.
Hey, thanks,
Appreciate
guys.
it so
nice
much,
chatting with you.
Thank you. Have a good one, bud.
Bye.
Take care.
Well, that was another fun one.
It was great. Kerby, one of the biggest collections of Portland wrestling history, so generous with his time, so generous with his collection. Did you hear what he's bringing to the Portland Wrestling Expo?
Oh my
Items
gosh.
from Buddy Rose, from Dutch Savage, from Roddy Piper. Anyone that's seen this stuff on video, on DVD, streaming on YouTube, you'll be able to see it in person on Saturday, February 22nd. I'm looking forward to it. I don't have a ring-worn collection, but I've been able to sell, and help transfer a lot of stuff from the talent to big collectors. But every time I see a piece, you realize it's literal wrestling history. And a lot of that's going to be available to see on February 22nd at the Portland Wrestling Expo.
Well, you think about those names, Roddy Piper, Buddy Rose, Dutch Savage, and the list goes on. Those guys can't be there, unfortunately. They're no longer with us. But piece of their history will be there. And that's really cool that Kerby's going to bring that to the table, because fans that have been longtime fans, not just from the 1980s, but maybe even prior, now they get to go back and go, wow, I remember when he was wearing that, and, when this happened and whatnot. So that's a pretty cool time. It's just, you're covering all the bases here, Nick, and I'm looking forward to it. So exciting, the Portland Wrestling Expo and everything you have going on with that. You got something else coming up even much sooner than the Portland Wrestling Expo, I do believe.
We do, and can't forget. The Portland Wrestling Expo is such an exciting endeavor. I told you about the ticket sales that we were just impressed and humbled by, and all the amazing guests that are going to be there. But I can't forget about my baby in New England, and that's the Wrestling Classic. And we are only weeks away for the next Wrestling Classic, which is Saturday, November 16th. There's been some lineup turnover and some issues involving someone that won't be named, but I'm still excited for this lineup. And we added a bunch of names over the last couple of weeks. So in addition to Jerry Lawler, to Jim Ross, to Deborah McMichael, to the Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant, the Tonga Kid, Devon Dudley, Downtown Bruno, the Brooklyn Brawler. We've also added another Hall of Famer. Tony Atlas will be with us at the Wrestling Classic at Springfield, Massachusetts, South End Community Center. And we also added from AEW, once again, Allie the Bunny. So we've got a lot of great names, and tickets are on sale. We are almost close to selling out our GA Plus tickets, which include an autograph of Tony Atlas and early admission to the show. Head over to zombiehideout.com to get your tickets now. And we're not done. We've still got 3 or 4 announcements to come, and the event is a little over 2 weeks away. So head on over to the Captain's Corner Facebook to see all the news about the Wrestling Classic and the guests that are going to be added very soon. And then we've got the tickets available at Zombie Hideout.
Well, that's pretty damn cool to add Tony Atlas to that list. I got to get me a Tony Atlas promo pick, and I got to get me a Saba Simba promo pick even more.
I think I know someone that could help you out, Ray. Say less. I got you covered.
I got Akeem sitting here right behind me on the wall. I could put up another African right next to some Saba Simba.
There you go. Brothers from another mother.
The match that never happened, unfortunately.
If only.
Well, I guess that's pretty much going to... Well, we covered a lot of ground here. That talked Hulk Hogan, talked Ric Flair, talked the Portland Wrestling Expo. Man.
Without taking a break, Ray, you kept up with me each step. You led the way. Just another episode of the Captain's Corner podcast is in the books. We didn't slow down. We didn't stop. And hopefully everyone enjoyed the last 45 minutes or so. And hopefully their ears are filled up, but ready for another episode of the Captain's Corner podcast. Couldn't do without you, Ray.
Well, Nick, don't forget to tell everybody how they can find the Captain's Corner on social media.
Well, of course. On Facebook, quick search of Captain's Corner. It'll bring up, and the icon should be the Wrestling Classic 5 flyer, which features, like I said, Jim Ross, Jerry Lawler, Devon Dudley front and center. And then on Instagram, I'm also at Captain's Corner. So those are the 2 places where I do most of my social media posting. But once again, love to see everyone in Springfield, Mass on November 16th, and then in Portland, Oregon on February 22nd. My first time in the Pacific Northwest. So come out. I'll be there all weekend. We've got some radio and television appearances that we'll probably tell everyone about as it gets closer. So I'll be there a few days before the 22nd, but I'm looking forward to the maiden voyage out in the Pacific Northwest, and we'll be telling everyone about it right here on the Captain's Corner podcast. Couldn't do without you and your podcast network, Ray. Where can everyone find you? Oh,
absolutely. Well, you just talked about the podcast network. This is one of the most fun shows I have a great time with you every time we're out here, Nick, doing this thing. We just have smiles on our faces and enjoy ourselves. You're enjoying some beverages right now. I wish
Cheers.
I was. Yeah. But no, you guys can find all the great podcasts over at WrestleCopia.com. Tommy Rich, now part of Dangerous Conversations along with Doug Gilbert. So now it's Tommy Rich and Doug Gilbert. You guys can send in your questions to Gene Jackson, and he'll get them to answer them right there on the show for us. I'm looking forward to seeing how that, they've already done a couple episodes, and we continue to move on. In fact, your good buddy, our good friend here, friend of the show, Grappler Lynn Denton, going to appear this week alongside Doug Gilbert to tell some old school stories. Yeah, we got a lot going on. So WrestleCopia.com.
Expo.
He better plug that. I saw it in the notes. I do believe he does.
Okay.
But yeah, anywho, yeah, so we got like a dozen podcasts going on right now. We also have video casts now available on patreon.com/WrestleCopia. Dan Ginnity and his Pro Wrestling Academy going back in time and doing a great watch along party. Just Dan adding context to everything going on. So anybody who ever watched Japanese wrestling and said, I just can't get into it because I don't know what's going on. The matches look great, but I don't know what's going on. Dan fills you in, and it's a great time. I get to co-host that with him. Also, we do a Coliseum video cast. We do some other things as well. You guys can check that out at Patreon. But let's not forget to follow me on Twitter, X. I guess it's X now, isn't it, Nick? At Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. And follow me on Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And that should do it here this week.
We did it again, Ray. I'm losing count of the episodes, but the important thing is we're having so much fun recording. And, you're there, first mate, Rugged Ray Russell, and we're going to have another old friend join us sooner rather than later, and that's my main man, Barry Rose. He'll be on with us probably in the next episode, talk about something else that may be coming up. So make sure to stay tuned for that next episode.
Well, I'm looking forward to that one as well. So we already kind of have an idea of what may be happening here next time around. Guys, stay tuned for another edition of the Captain's Corner. Not too far away. Hope you enjoyed this one. No, you did. And we'll see you back here soon.
Cheers to the working man.